Hello, everyone. Welcome to our March edition of Ecology Presents. Wait, I need to put our fun little logo in the corner or else it's not real. There it is. So exciting. I'm Kristen Hancock. I'm with Ecology. My pronouns are she and her. I am joining you on this, I guess, second day of spring. So I hope everyone's yesterday was sunshine and roses and beautiful spring things. We're talking about all things merger and acquisition today, which I have zero experience with. So lucky for you, I will not be the only person on this wonderful live stream event. I am going to be joined by, in 3, 2, 1, Lanice and Deborah. Hello.
Hello.
So excited to have two of our Ecology members joining us today because they are far more experts than I am. As everyone knows, every time we do an Ecology Presents, what happens is the people that I reach out to and say, hey, you have some experience in this topic. And then inevitably, because they're in internal comms, they say, oh, no, not me. I've only done 17 mergers. So I just don't know if I'm really the expert in this field. So I will hesitate to call them experts because I know they will try and argue with me, but they have all kinds of experience. This is true, right? We can say that fairly? Awesome. So I would love to know, we're going to do some little intros here, but I would love to know for everyone who's joining us on LinkedIn, where you are joining us from, if you have any experience in mergers and acquisitions, because that would be super helpful in the chat. We've got all kinds of time for questions, for answers, for discussion, for jokes, challenges, whatever people want to bring. We've got a little song and dance planned. We do not, but I wish we had now. Okay, cool. Oh, see, Zahid agrees with me. I see people the worst at tooting our own horn. It is absolutely true. If we were in marketing or sales, I would have to bat people away from being in our live stream events because everybody would be like, I'm the best at this. I want to be in it. No offense to marketing and sales. Lanice, why don't we start with you and give us a little rundown of who you are, where you're from, all those fun business things. And then here is the question I want to know from you. And okay. Deborah, I'm going to ask you the same thing.
Oh,
what is your favorite non-professional merged flavor, i.e. peanut butter and jam, peanut butter and chocolate, raspberry lemon, whatever. What is the best flavor combination in your world?
Okay. Actually have that one. That one was going to be as bad as I thought it was going to be. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning to anyone who might be on the West Coast. My name is Lanice Williams Green. I currently reside right outside the Richmond, Virginia area. My family relocated over this past summer from West Philadelphia, so quite a change. I am an internal comms expert with well over a decade of experience, spending 4 years working for a company that part of our growth strategy was mergers and acquisitions. And so that's sort of how I got cut my teeth in that whole field. I currently work for a med tech company supporting executive and leadership communications.
Go ahead. No, tell me your merged flavor first.
Merged flavors. Vanilla ice cream or like a milkshake. So specifically a Frosty and French fries.
Oh, yeah. A Frosty and French fries.
Mm-hmm. So you have the Frosty and you dip the French fries in it.
That's a goddess move. That is awesome. Love that Frosty and French fries thing.
Yes, okay, I need to know from people in the chat if this is I'm not going to knock it because I haven't tried it. So props to you. I also need to know, Lanice, and I'm sorry to do this to you. I need to know if you, or maybe anyone else who's joining us today, when you say that you're from West Philadelphia, does everyone think of the Fresh Prince theme song, or was it just me? Because all I could think of was in West Philadelphia, born and raised. That's all I could think about.
It depends on if you are actually a Philly native. So I was not a Philly native. I moved to Philadelphia for a job, and it just became home. But my husband, who was born and raised in Philly, no, he does. That is not the first thing he thinks of. There's I think that's number 100 on the things that he thinks of when someone says West Philadelphia.
All right, fair. Okay, Christine is agreeing with you. So good.
Yes.
So is Katie. Frosty love. It's a thing. Okay, I need to try it. I need to do
it. It is a thing.
And I need to try it. That's really funny. Rachel saying chocolate shake and sweet potato fries. Okay, this is going.
Try that one. I might have to try that one.
Okay, Deborah, you, my friend, are up.
Okay, so hi everybody. Again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wheresoever thou may be. I am Deborah Hellwig. I am the Internal Communications Director for a large agricultural focused accounting and consulting firm called Pinion. We have about 750 humans, but we're spread across 30 states, and now we have some global capability centers overseas as well. And in the 7 years I've been here, we've done 6 M&As. So I've, been around that.
Yeah, you've kind of done that a few times. Yeah, cool.
Just a little bit. And so, gosh, merged flavors. Woo! So many. How do you choose? I got to go classic, right? Cheesecake with red chocolate. How can you screw that up?
Okay. Yeah, that's a solid combination. Yeah.
Yeah.
My favorite is like when people are like, oh, chocolate or vanilla, and I'm like, both. I want both of them.
The twist cone is
chocolate and caramel. That's like a double whammy for me. If something has chocolate and caramel, like the caramel brownies, we're all going to be going to snack on things after this.
You add nuts to that, and you got me.
Yeah. Okay. And Lindsay's backing me up. She thought of Fresh Prince. Okay. So thanks, Lindsay. It's not just me.
No, it's not just you. I just think it depends.
It's one of those things that if you're not from the area, you're like, oh, you thought of this. And everyone from the area is like, no, we didn't. This is the same as whenever, I guarantee you, any Canadians who are Zahid's on this call, I don't know if there's other Canadians joining us. Anytime, I can always tell when an American ad or marketing agency does content for something in Canada, because they will always use A, like EHA, in part of their marketing. And every Canadian is like, okay, this is old. Okay. We're done with this.
Let it go.
Let it go. Exactly. Let it go.
Yep.
All right, let's get into the professional side of mergers, not just the food side. So we're gonna start at the very beginning. And again, if you have questions, you have comments, pop them in the chat. We'll happily bring them up here. I want to start at the very beginning. I have never been part of a merger or an acquisition. I would love to know from both of you, but maybe Lanice I'll point my finger at you first. At what point should internal comms be brought into the conversation when it comes to mergers and acquisitions? And if you have horrible stories about how late you were brought in, we're also open to hearing those as well.
Yeah, because there's the ideal,
right?
And then there's the realistic, and then hopefully your goal should be to find the sweet spot that's somewhere in the middle.
Yes.
And so ideally, comms people should be bought in depending on the rules, regulations of your state in the deal and all of that stuff. That's legal's problem. Just go ask them, for questions. But once it's been determined that you're actually going to move forward, even if the letter of intent and all of those details are still being worked out, that is when you should be brought in, because that is when a lot of the conversations are going to start about what does this new company look like what's staying, what's going. These are all things that you're going to need to help prep yourself and help prep employees and ask the questions that no one is thinking. Now, when do they get brought in? When I first started doing this, I was getting brought in 3 to 5 days before a deal was signed. That just left everyone scrambling.
No kidding.
And so kind of the sweet spot is a lot of times companies are like, well, let's just wait till everybody has agreed on a contract and we at least have a LOI signed, even if it doesn't, the actual merger or acquisition is going to be a few months out. I think that's a sweet spot, as given hopefully that you still have at least 3 months to sort of plan and kind of pull together the activities. But the short is
acronym debunking, just in case anyone's
letter of intent. Sorry.
Thank you. There we go. I'm sure most people know, but you never know if anyone's like me.
Yes, your letter of intent is what we call the LOI.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Deborah, stories of you being brought in at last minute, or have you been fortunate that you've been brought in early enough?
Both and, right? And so what I would say from the internal comms seat, if you're working external comms, that 3 to 5 day window is not optimal, right? But you're putting out a press release at that point. And with internal comm, the closer you can get to that decision, we're going to proceed, even before that letter of intent is signed, the better off you are, because integration starts then.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so you, as an internal communicator, are going to be part of greasing the wheels of helping those people that are coming into your organization understand your culture, understanding what their concerns are, making sure HR is communicating all the benefit changes. All of that stuff starts so much earlier than the announcement out to the world. You really need to try to get, and the best place probably for you to get plugged into that conversation is if you don't, as an internal communicator, sit in the HR function of your company or the people function of your company, you need to be bestie bests, like taking them out for ice cream, bestie best.
Take them out for a Frosty and French fries.
Yes, precisely, with your HR team, because if they can see the benefit that you're going to bring, they're going to bring you in to help craft those communications to help people understand what the benefits piece is, and that gives you that leg up to get inside and start talking about all the other aspects of change management that come as part of an integration.
Do you go ahead, Lenise?
I was going to say, and even if it's like not the HR person, like, listen, people have different personalities. Find someone, it could be the strategy person. It could be the strategy professional for the organization, because they're aware of like what companies your company is looking at in terms of sort of these deals. So whoever it is, make friends with them and like demonstrate like your value and how you can actually help them do their job better and more efficiently. And you'll get a heads up on things that may not even go anywhere, but it might just be like, hey, heads up, this is what we're thinking, so that you can at least in the back of your head start to plan and start to run through the things that you think you'll need to be successful.
I wonder, this seems to support a lot of conversations that we have in our industry about, I hate the seat at the table thing, but like basically having access to C-suite people, leadership people, all of that it strikes me as likely that the closer you function to those people, or the closer that your role is to those people, the more likely you are to be brought in earlier, if for no other reason than mergers and acquisitions are often pretty top secret up until the point that they're not. So there can only be trusted people in the room, right, when those conversations are happening. So all this to say, it seems like the more you can demonstrate value leading up to situations like this, the more likely you are to be brought in sooner. Is yes, no?
Yes, and on top of that, so yes, and right. I think it's, you show trust in small things to get trust in big things.
Exactly.
And if you prove, even through smaller stuff, that you are able to take messages that may be difficult or complex and smooth that path and create clarity and understanding and storytell in a way that creates less friction for leadership with the people in an organization, the more likely it is when bigger things come around, they'll remember that and say, hey, let's get Deborah in this conversation because she's got the magic of words or whatever to make this go better for us. So sometimes it's not them thinking strategically, but really looking to solve a pain point or a problem for them. And if you've demonstrated that you can do that with things that don't have as much sort of confidentiality around them, they may be more inclined to pull you in.
And at the same time, yes, mergers and acquisitions are often top secret until the deal has actually been signed. But another way that I think internal comms professionals play a vital role is that we know what the water cooler conversations are. We kind of have our ears to the ground in the organization. And one thing that's really important is, if this somehow leaks, right, you can have as tight of a ship as possible. If someone leaves their phone on their desk to run to the restroom and something pops up and someone happens to see it or whatnot, and it gets out and rumors are starting to spread across the organization, the internal comms person is going to be in the best position to help respond to those rumors in a way that is honest and transparent as you can be up until that point, but also keeps the the actual like deal and all of its contents and structures sort of like secret. So that is something that you can't really do from a place of like not knowing that this exists. And so again, if you've had situations where you kind of been able to show how you've helped, use the water cooler to your advantage, and sharing company news or kind of help squash rumors throughout the workplace, that's another way of demonstrating your value and arguing for being brought in sooner.
Have you experienced, I'm curious if folks who are joining us in the chat have experienced the rumor mill prior to a merger, or have most of your situations been pretty tight-lipped until the moment of truth?
No, we've definitely had one that like leaked. And I think it leaked because it went on too long.
Oh, like the talks leading up to the finalization.
Yeah, I think, okay. and that's what it was, because you can only sneak so many people in through a back door for like these confidential meetings. At some point, someone's going to look up and start putting two and two together. Like now, again, that was pre-pandemic. So I think it might be a little bit easier to do that now because you don't necessarily have to.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
But yeah, like I think it was just because it just went on too long and like people were just starting to like put two and two together and ask like questions.
Yeah.
Well, and in the case, it depends on the size of the M&A too. Holding in a 3-person company, that's pretty easy probably for that not to fly under the radar. The one that we just did at my firm took our firm from 450 to 720 people overnight. There's too many people involved in the conversation. And it becomes like, I don't know if you remember at the end of the first Harry Potter movie, Dumbledore sits down next to Harry and says, this is the greatest, most confidential secret in the school. So of course everyone knows. And that's exactly what you're talking about when you're talking about a substantial merger and acquisition, because even the due diligence conversation has to involve so many departments and so many parties that people are going to
The bigger the group, the more risk you have of just things just leaking intentionally and unintentionally. Sense. Like it's not always intentional. It's just stuff happens.
Right. People start putting pieces together, speculation, rumor mill.
You put a folder on a shared drive called Project Zygote. Like, of course somebody's going to think something's up.
Project stealth mode.
Oh no, that's fabulous.
What are some of the so you get brought in, and let's say you get brought in an ideal time, in a lovely, perfect world that you've been brought in right from that LOI point. What do those first hours, days look like from an internal comms perspective? Like who are you reaching out to? Are you putting anything out yet? Or are you like how do you get your proverbial ducks in a row at that point?
Well, go ahead. You want to go first, Lisa?
I was just gonna say, I think for me, my first question always is why? Like, why are we doing this like merger, or why are we acquiring this company? Because that helps craft the story that you are going to tell employees, that the external team is going to use to tell customers and clients, and like our external piece. So I think that's like the first question you have to start with is, okay, so why are we doing this deal? And understanding sort of what the benefit is for both sides, and sort of have they started to think about what's staying and what's going, or is it that everything's going to stay the same for a year and then we'll come back? Those are just important questions to know, because it helps inform how you craft the story moving forward. So that's always like my first step.
That's also an interesting question, asking the why, because you also are an employee of that company, right? So that would be a very normal, expected question that you would ask for yourself, and therefore other employees are going to ask for themselves as well. Yeah. Deborah, what were you going to add to that?
Yeah, so what I would add to that is, from a very practical perspective, my first question, Lanice is obvious, yes, 100%. But when you get past that, my first question is, do they have an internal communications team? Or am I doing both sides of this by myself? Because the one I just did, they didn't have a comm function. they really didn't have any cadence or anything that they were operating in their firm. So suddenly I'm Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers doing it backwards and high heels both ways.
Deborah's got the euphemisms for like
yes,
all the things.
It.
Yeah.
But for real, man, I'm saying it's you're all of a sudden I'm having to operate both sides of that house. And trying to get into what their culture is feeling and finding out what they're up to. And so I'm doing 2 communications every other week, one to our people, one to their people, making sure that both sides of the house know what's happening and that everybody feels loved and taken care of. And that's a very different equation than if the organization has a full-on internal comm function and they have great communications vehicles, and it's figuring out, okay, how are we going to do this together? You use yours, I use mine, until we get to the point of merger. And while we're going through that equation, we're trying to figure out which cadence is going to work for all of us long term. Whose intranet? What intranet is going to flow to our intranet? It's just a completely different conversation than when you're going in greenfield and like, okay, you guys have nothing, and therefore I'm the best you got. Let's go do this thing.
Let's go do this.
He would like you to know, Deborah, that your pop culture references are on point.
And I think another important question is, what is the expected timeline from the execs on how long this integration will take? So like, when are we going public with this news, right? So that's one milestone. And then what is your expectation of a full-on integration? And again, that is something that will vary based on, again, the laws and whatever is governing the deal, the size of the company, the number of systems that might have to be converted or switched over. So, as Deborah said, if it's a 3-person like team and you're just essentially absorbing 3 people, the integration will probably take 2 months. And I'm being generous there because you want to just give people a chance to adjust to the change. But if you're a large company merging with a large company, integration can take years. But understanding from the exec's perspective of what they're thinking about in terms of an integration helps you kind of work backwards and figure out what your milestones are. Because a lot of times, in my experience, your integration team can be hit or miss. And so you might be helping them fill in the pieces of when they have to have different things accomplished at what points.
Well, and make it times 3. Okay. Because your integration team is thinking very much in statistical milestones of when are the systems going to be pulled together? When are we going to have everybody on the same software? When are we going to be using the same processes? And they are not thinking guarantee about heads and hearts.
Yes.
Okay. And so for you as the communications person, whatever they say that integration window is, that's when the systems are done. You've still got to get that cultural piece really baked. And that is a lot of focused intentionality from you, from your people team, and whoever in your firm is responsible for employee engagement, to make sure that you're not allowing silos to build that are going to be really, really hard to bust.
So I want to talk about this integration team or integration committee, whatever we want to call it, integration party. It all sounds so fun. Lenise, that's something you brought up. And I know, Deborah, you've kind of worked on that model as well. And I would love for people to have a better understanding of who's on that team and who heads it up, who starts it.
Yeah, I think, again, these are things that vary, but at a minimum, you're going to have someone from the exec team. So whether it's the CEO himself or he's tasked another member of his exec team to kind of sit in his place, that will be there, a rep from HR, accounting, finance, HR, communications, and that can look like, external comms, internal comms, marketing. Again, it varies. Who else am I missing? Facilities. So if you're like having like multiple offices, you might have someone like from facilities on there. Sometimes we have like the executive assistant who's also responsible for like the different admins or receptionists at locations. Again, it's like
Those people are so important.
Yeah.
Aside from M&A, but they are overlooked often.
So yeah, I think it's important. It's going to be based on who makes up that organization, the old organization, and what it will look like the new organization. And it usually includes representatives from both sides. That's typically what makes up your integration team, if there's a representative from both sides.
Okay, so let's to boil it down to basics is the people what figure out how stuff gets done.
Right.
Okay,
The doers.
So it's the people that keep the operations house standing. It's results in finance, it's marketing, it's HR, it's recruiting, it's communications. But then also for us, we're an accounting firm. We had our heads of tax. We had our heads of audit because they had to. There are processes on how we get done that have to be integrated together. So it was leaders from both sides of that equation.
So Troy's question flows nicely into this. How have you communicated to employees on both sides during this integration period? I would love to know that too. That's a tough go, especially, and I imagine a little bit of a nuance, whether it's a true merger or an acquisition, because those are two very different, there's a subtle difference, but there's a big one.
Yeah, well, okay. Yes.
Are we going to argue about it? Yes. Just kidding.
I think it just comes down to how people feel, right? So people feel better about hearing the word merger versus.
Well, that's just it. I've seen a number of situations over the last specifically year or two where there are companies that have merged, and I'm like, that was not a merger, but okay, we can all feel good about it.
We've used the word combination.
Yes.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Because people do feel weird.
Yeah.
People do feel weird. But okay, you want to answer this?
I was going to say, did you want to answer that one first?
Yeah, I sure can, because we just did a lot of this. Like I said, I was doing my Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers with this. So what we did that really made a huge difference on the firm, the large company that we were acquiring, is I opened question banks. I used a tool we have in-house called Conferences.io, which is basically like an events tool where you can do like Q&A for conferences, but we opened up banks for the major areas of the firm: HR and benefits, technology, tax, audit, whatever. And we let the employees from the firm that was coming on board with us put any question they could think of in those banks. And the commitment that we made is that every single one would be answered. So I was the one that took the responsibility for going through those banks and going out to our leaders and making sure we had answers. And we published a newsletter every other week, two ways. We sent one to our folks in the organization we were acquiring, and then one to our people where we were answering the questions from employees about this stuff. So that was a huge piece of the communication. And then the other thing that we did that was really successful is we found a couple of ways that we could begin some employee engagement interaction. We held a summer vacation photo contest, and we invited people from both organizations to be part of that. And the way we did it is we took the admin teams from the two organizations and let them record selfie video of themselves introducing themselves, where they worked, and what their favorite vacation memory was. And we made the cross groups of admins the judges.
Oh, that's
so
clever.
The acquiring firm judged our stuff and our admin judged their stuff. And we pushed out those videos, introduced the admin teams, got huge take up on people submitting photos. And then we did a big slideshow, all big one happy family. Everybody got to see everybody's personal vacation pictures, and it just really sort of broke the ice. And we started seeing each other as people and not just like a giant wall of culture I don't know.
And they lived happily ever after.
And, it really did make a difference.
I bet it did.
Then the other thing we did was we started a buddy system.
Oh, that's clever.
Early, where we took our leaders at the manager and above, and assigned them a person in the organization that we were acquiring, and gave them we created like Wheel of Fortune wheels with like icebreaker questions that we provided as part of their kit to be a buddy. we did sort of like dating sheets where we could put everything like about what you do, but also are you a morning songbird or a night owl, coffee or tea, so when you sent your stuff to somebody, you knew a little bit about them, so that it wasn't this weird.
Yep.
Who the heck are you call? So I think there's a whole lot about humanizing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of questions here. So, oh, Bob, my dear friend, Bob. Okay. I'm putting this comment up, Bob, because I would love for you in the comments to define ADA and CARE, because I know they're acronyms, but and then I will bring that up after because you will describe it better than I will. Suffice to say, head and heart there's an interesting merger there, right? That's I think what we're trying to do is bring together the logistical part of it and also the human part of it, because they're both very important. Rachel says, great strategy to have question banks. Was it a struggle to get leaders to commit to supporting with behavior that every question would be answered?
Interesting question. I have fortunately already been through that exercise with our town halls, because when we started doing town halls 2 years ago, my executives were scaredy cats and refused to do them live. So what we did was we opened question banks in advance so they could prepare. And I know it's not the same. Yeah, okay, we're working on it. I got that. But what I said when we did that was if people ask a question, you have to answer it. The end. And so we had already sort of built that culturally in my organization. But I feel like that's the message that has to come from internal comms to leadership is if you ask, you have to answer. It's just as bad as throwing a survey out there and then doing nothing with the results. People feel marginalized and demotivated, and you have totally undone any good that you would have done from doing a survey. Question bank, same thing. So
I agree.
Okay, Lenise, I'm going to punt this question over to you here. Is it better to allow an acquiring company to keep their culture, process, branding, et cetera, or is it better to rip the Band-Aid off and fully integrate as soon as possible? I have a sub-question to that.
Okay.
And my sub-question is that your choice? Or is that decision made for you as an internal communicator?
It is not your choice. It is often made for you. It is often one of those things that gets heavily negotiated as part of the due diligence process.
Oh, interesting.
So before you even find out about it, like that part has been negotiated of how long do they get to keep their name? How long do they get to keep certain processes?
Okay.
For the name piece, just for marketplace and like ease of confusion, a lot of times I think you can just rip the Band-Aid off, right? Like just put this on here, like you're now Acme Incorporated, right? However, there are times where you have one, like a well-known and a well-established company merging with another well-known established company. In that situation, it may make sense to say, Butter Incorporated, a subsidiary of, Acme or whatever. It just depends. A lot of times I think it's more of an ego thing where companies are like, no, we need to keep our name for a year. And it's like, no one knows you outside of this like small area. But whatever, like you have no control over that. It does make it harder, I think, from an integration and an internal comms perspective, because you are fighting with the employees to get them to come over and start to see themselves as part of this larger organization and not just their company that they were part of. So in that regard, it really does create additional challenges from an internal comms perspective. In terms of culture, that is one of, I think, the most overlooked aspects of mergers and acquisition is knowing whether or not the two company cultures align. And I don't think that executives put a lot of emphasis on that, and it doesn't always work out well. So you can't take a laid back culture that we, thinking of like the Facebooks and Googles of the world, like back when they started, and pair them up with a company that's run like a military organization. It's just the cultures are going to clash. The work styles are different. The expectations of people are different. And now you're spending more time putting out fires because it's a difference in culture and work styles, and not actually, focused on like what was supposed to come out of these two companies coming together. So I say all that to say that if there's anything that you can help influence as an internal comms person, is making sure that the executives who are thinking about these mergers and acquisitions also are like asking questions about the culture. And that's where you can partner with HR. You can kind of share your experience from like an internal comms perspective of like how you view the culture, sort of like what works in terms of people. Like if you're a company that uses social, like internal social channels as a way of communicating, and that works really well, and you're moving away from email, the acquired company or the merging company needs to know that, because that might change the way that they receive information or expect to receive information. So, thinking about that, knowing how to put those into questions, I think is extremely important and valuable in this merger and acquisition landscape.
If I will tell you this, if you don't get culture alignment at the baseline before the LOI, if you do it wrong once, you'll never do it wrong again. Okay, because it will.
I agree. You will not.
5 years down the line, going, oh my God, what have we done? So in terms of keeping their culture, not only no, but hell no. You've got to get aligned on how, even if it's not, you got two different organizations, you're going to have to get some people in a room and woodshed. How are we going to go from here? Because you cannot have two cultures at war with each other in one organization.
And ideally the cultures will align, and you won't have to, like, it's not a giving up of the culture. It's a combining of the cultures and bringing out the best in each other. But yes, that has got to be figured out like during the due diligence.
Correct. Processes absolutely can extend. For example, like I said, we're an accounting firm. Our merger went live on Jan 3. That is the beginning of tax season.
Yes.
We are running parallel tax seasons through May, letting them use their software. We're using our software. We're talking constantly. They're using our intranet, but we've given them a place for them for now, that they're going to migrate over to our normal space soon. It's because that the amount of disruption that would have come out of trying to make them switch all this software at the beginning of the peak season of the year, that was dumb. So, but you have a plan for that process to roll over. You don't just let it go indefinitely. And the same thing with branding. Lenny said it best. If there is a real reason in the marketplace for a brand to maintain for name recognition or some other reason, that's okay. But that's where that culture piece comes in. It's like, we're still talking about you outside as if you're this, but you're really one of us. And what do you call your people in your organization? At Pinion, we call ourselves Pinioneers. Those people are Pinioneers now. And when we did our big launch on Jan 3, welcome Pinioneers, and we call them by that, and we talk to them about our culture stuff, and we talk about how it is so similar to what they had before. We find those points of connectivity where things look familiar but maybe have a different name.
Yeah. That's definitely something important to highlight on day one. We would always start with a town hall for both organizations on day one and highlight the similarities before we even talked about the differences or sort of like what's changing. Because again, you want people to feel excited, and people are going to feel nervous. You hear that your company has just got acquired by someone else, or you hear that your company has just bought another firm. Like, people are going to be nervous because it's like, what does this mean for me? What does it mean for my job? What does it mean for my future? And so as many steps as you can take on those first few days of the announcements coming out, sharing, like, if you're getting traction externally, like working with the PR team to share like how it's being perceived in the marketplace is really important, because you ultimately want people to feel like this was a good thing, and it means only opportunity and growth for them, and kind of take their mind away from where we can go during those places, which is sort of doom and gloom and, oh my God, I'm not going to have a job anymore, or I'm no longer valuable.
You know, whenever I do talking about internal eventually I will throw up Maslow's hierarchy of needs because, you know, it's a thing.
Yeah.
But at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy, right, is food and shelter.
Yes.
Then you get up sort of into, you know, relationships and then self-actualization. And you take that over into the internal comm space. And the deal is, at the end of the day, that food shelter piece, the bottom of that pyramid is my company successful? Will I have a job tomorrow?
Yep.
Do I have the tools to do my job? Do I understand the processes to do my job? If you have not answered those 4 questions, I don't care what kind of brand, I don't care what kind of D&I, I don't care what kind of bring your own self to work, I don't care what you're trying to talk to them about, they will not hear you.
And this is interesting. Zane posted here that, Lenice, you were talking about the first questions being why, and Deborah, you added some of yours as well. That it is telling, and I think that's a mark of a good internal communicator, asking the same questions that the average employee is going to wonder about. Why are we doing this? How is it going to impact me? How long is this going to take? Like, are there going to be layoffs? Even if the answer is, I don't know, the question being asked at least reassures them that someone is validating their experience of going through this.
And don't use I don't know because you don't want to tell the truth, right? Because that ultimately comes back to bite you in your behind. You know, if you know for a fact, again, a lot of these details are negotiated during the due diligence piece. So you know that if you're going to have to cut staff as part of this merger and acquisition, because usually whoever's financing the deal is saying, okay, but in order for me to give you this money, you're going to need to reduce headcount by this many. A lot of these details are not new. They're sort of negotiated at the start. Be honest. So if you know that, you know, there will be a reorg with this merger and acquisition, say, you know, for 6 months, we're going to keep everything the same. At that time, we will like reevaluate the organization and make the necessary changes, right? So you're not lying because you know that it's going to happen, but at least people know that for a period of time, nothing is going to change. And sometimes that's all people need to know, is that nothing is going to change right now. I do have a period of time to kind of get myself together, so to speak.
Yeah. And you know, coming back to my question bank thing, the one thing that's really powerful about the question bank is it's given them a visible place that everyone can see that question is written down. Okay. So there is catharsis and power in putting your question out there and knowing it's out there where other people see it's being asked. That sort of takes the sales out of that grapevine conversation, right? Because it's out there, and it's okay to say we don't have that answer yet, but before the merge date, we'll have it, and then it's out there, right? There's just a lot of people when they get upset or concerned, they ruminate and they start asking this over and over, and it becomes a conversation. It starts spinning, and it spins out to other people, and people who weren't nervous get nervous. So by saying, put it all down there, they're like, oh, I've been hurt. And it changes the game.
Yeah. I'm curious about one of the things we talked about was day one and welcome Pioneers. By the way, that's a very clever employee name. You know, what are the things? So I know there's the I don't want to say typical, because there's probably a lot of companies that don't do it. The swag, right? The t-shirts or the mouse pads or the silly things, whatever. But what are the other things that happen from a welcoming standpoint if you are the company that is welcoming new people into your world?
So at the beginning, so when I first started working for my former company, we would create swag that was representative of the city that they lived in. So we bought a company that was in Seattle. We had custom Lego kits that made the Space Needle.
That is cool.
That people got. As we started to do more and more of those, it became not so much cost effective to keep doing like the customized swag. So we kind of went to a standard model. But the one thing that I think to this day I appreciate is that we had a playbook that included information sort of about the merger story, timeline of key milestones, but it also included who's who of major people for each department. So you can look at this playbook and know who was going to be your accounting partner for your area, or you could reach out and see like who was going to be your main marketing contact for like a particular design type and things like that. That was something that I used because as an employee, people change, people get new roles. So I knew the playbook always had the most up-to-date information. So if I wasn't quite sure who to reach out to, that helped. And it helped put faces to names. And we always like included, like, of course, you would have the professional stuff, but some sort of fun fact about the person to kind of humanize them. And then the playbook would also include some basic like HR information. So we had this chart that talked about benefits, and we used emoticons that had like the smiley face, the sad face, and the neutral face, because we recognized that sometimes the companies that we were merging with, they were going to give up a benefit that was like really great that we just weren't in a position to offer. So we would acknowledge like that was like sad. But, you know, our goal was to always highlight all of the other great benefits with like smileys and stuff that they might be getting. And so that I think is great. A playbook, you can template it and you can just fill in the information as needed.
That's a good point, Lanice, because Zane just brought up too, like, what if this isn't an opportunity, right? There might be times where the company being acquired or merging with is like, oh, wow, we're going to get more paid time off or whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. There are also times where it might not. Like there might be... Right.
You get less PTO. Like I've been in that situation where we've had that conversation and it sucks. And you just acknowledge that, you know, we know that you really enjoyed having this benefit, but at this time, like we can't offer it. And, you know, you may not get, you know, let's say 3 weeks, but, you know, we give you more like maybe paid company holidays, or we have those extra floating days that can be used at your discretion. Or maybe there is a separate pool for sick time, so you don't have to use sick time as part of your vacation time. So, and sometimes it's none of those things and it just sucks. And I think as part of being a good person and just, you know, being a human and like not a corporate robot is just acknowledging that sometimes, yeah, we might take away something that you really like and we're sorry, but bringing people back to like, what is the larger goal and thinking about the collective and the opportunity and what it means for the company and trying to get them to kind of come a little bit outside of themselves.
I like the smiley face tactic, partly because it's very easy to identify. It's very visual. And also because it's just very honest.
Yeah.
Like there are going to be parts that suck for people coming, going, joining, whatever. And I think that acknowledges like, yes, we know. We're not trying to sugarcoat and tell you like, it's better that you have less vacation time. Like, you know, we know that. That's, you know, no one's going to argue that. Bob was saying here, building a positive critical mass versus a negative critical mass. Absolutely. Yep. No question.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, what the other thing I want to talk about here too, because we've talked a lot about, okay, we've got 10 minutes. I'm gonna make sure we have a lot of ground to cover here. So we've talked about a couple of tools. We've talked about the conferences.io app that you've used for the Q&A, Deborah, you mentioned. We've talked about doing a town hall, like day one kind of thing, contests, and the playbook, which people love, which is really cool. What are some other tools that you've relied on, whether they're technology tools or like in-person kinds of tools, to get people on board, answer questions, and share information and communicate with employees?
Oh, hell's bells. If you're not using your intranet as your single source of truth for everything and getting the people that are coming into your firm trained up right away on how to use your intranet then you are missing an opportunity. If you have a great intranet, which we do, and we really do double down on that being our single source of truth. That was probably the most important thing for us. That and getting them just sort of incorporated into knowing what our cadences are. That we do a weekly newsletter that sort of recaps the intranet posts of the week and says other important things, that we use our intranet to post everything first, that our CEO does a video every 3 weeks, that we do a town hall on a quarterly basis, and this is where they're going to find things out. So getting them involved in that process, I think, is really critical. Video is a big tool.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you definitely need some form of digital strategy, right? So whether or not you have a true intranet or you have a SharePoint or some combination of all those things, you need to have a digital place, even if you only create it for the sole purpose of this merger and acquisition, that it's a place that is going to be regularly monitored, regularly updated, has all of the most up-to-date information. Heck, it could be a doc library, but you need to have a place that you send that people are going to that gives them the most up-to-date and accurate information. And you need to make sure that you have some sort of system in place for people to ask questions, get their questions answered, and all of those things. That's just basic, the nice to haves are the meet and greets and these like specialty platforms. When I was working and doing mergers and acquisitions, sometimes we would buy a company in the same city or like within a reasonable commute time. And we would say, once a month, you have to go to the other office. And that was just so people could get used to working with their counterpart in a way that it was equal. So like, it wasn't just the new acquired company always coming to like our company. It was a back and forth, so to speak. Part of it I realized from real estate was trying to figure out like which workspace was going to like work better. So it had like a functional aspect to it too. But when you encourage those, like, let's come together, meet and greets, it helps break down people's walls and silos. And, as an internal comms person, you can support whether it's an office manager or whomever on like how to facilitate those. So maybe it's like you start off with a breakfast or something and you just kind of do like an office meeting in the morning. Those are all, I consider those nice to have, but without a single place for people to go with all of the most updated information about what they need to know to be successful in this merger and acquisition, the rest of it just doesn't work. And it can be, I just do something besides email, because then you'll get the people who can't find the email, claim they haven't gotten the email, and they're bugging their manager who is already sweating bullets. So just make sure it can be as simple as a OneDrive link. Just make sure that there's some place where people can go.
The other thing that has been a real boon to my company is that we are a video first, camera on culture. That is, and we were using Blue Jeans long before there was Zoom and Teams, right? And
I forgot about Blue Jeans.
Yeah. Let's go back in the day.
Wow.
Now. Woo! So, but that really changes the game when you are getting to know people, whether it be one-on-one or team to team, to see the face.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know you said in addition to swag, but let's not put too fine a point on it. Swag matters.
Yep.
Sure does.
People want to represent their
They want nice,
stuff.
valuable, interesting things. No garbage swag. Okay.
Well, but something.
What is
something
that?
Simple, right? Just so put a welcome card in, but put a quote on the back that represents your values. This is we lean real heavily on a book called Exponential Organizations by Salim Ismail. So we picked a quote that was meaningful around working together, and we dropped this in. More people, if you go around the offices, they have this pinned up on their wall.
Oh, that's cool.
It's an introductory culture statement. I'll also show this thing because this has made a big deal for us. This is a little thing we call the Pinion Why. It's a little fold-out card. It's got our massive transformative purpose and clients first on one side.
Yeah.
It's got our mission, vision, values, and culture statements on the other. And you can just
And a coupon for a
Pocket.
Frosty on
Keep
the
it on your
last
desk.
section.
Frosty and French fries.
Frosty and French fries.
There you
Okay,
go.
here's our top 5. So when we had a little planning call before this, of course, and here's the top. So here's what it's going to be. It's going to be a top 4 with a surprise 5. So here we go. Stay with me here.
Okay.
Number 1, stand in your power and expertise. These are from Deborah and Lenise. Okay. So number 1, as internal communicators, this is one of the lessons we need to remember. Always stand in your power and expertise. You know what you're doing. Number 2, communicate early and often. Very important in all aspects of internal comms, but especially in times of massive change. Number 3, remember you know more than most. Even if you are not sitting at the C-suite table, you have access to information that most employees do not. Don't forget that. Remember that you're communicating with the rest of them. Number 4, stay calm. I have the Office meme with Michael Scott. Everybody stay calm.
Stay calm and manage your own emotions.
Yes. So number 5, here's going to be the fun ending to this. I threw a question at the two of you earlier asking your favorite flavor merger. Here's the fun part of this one. In my notes, I have number 5, be the. That's what it says. So I clearly forgot whatever the last word was going to be in the notes. So I would like each of you to fill this in. Lenise, be the.
Oh man, I gotta go first.
Or Deborah, whoever wants to go first.
Be the change you want to see.
Okay,
I'll keep it very generic and kitschy.
Okay.
Really, when I say that, like, you also are an employee who's being impacted. So ask the questions and behave in a way that is representative of how you would, if you were not in the position that you were in as an internal comms perspective, how would you want to receive this information? What would you want? And what would you want your experience to be?
Okay.
Yeah. And I would say be the connector, be the collaborator, and be the introducer, right? So what I say all the time is that you've got your recruiting team talking out one side of the organization about what's happening. You've got marketing talking out the other end about what's happening. And between the two, there is a great gulf fixed in which no employee knows what the hell anybody's saying to anybody else. So it's up to you to be that bridge builder, to be that connector, to hear this leader say this and this leader say that and go, did you know that you guys are kind of talking about the same thing? You really ought to be talking to each other. I cannot tell you the number of train wrecks that internal comm can prevent because because you're hearing all these pieces and you're in a position to be able to put that together and tell people about it in a way that it makes sense.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Thank you to both of you. Thank you for everyone who joined us today. This was such a great I learned a lot. Maybe now if I'm ever involved in a merger acquisition, I'll know a little bit more about what I'm doing. For anyone who's joined us.
You can always call us. We'll
absolutely.
Be there to
Deborah and Lenise
are
both on LinkedIn. I tagged them in this event, so feel free to ask them questions, reach out to them. They're both lovely people. Obviously, they're Ecology members. If you are not an Ecology member, please think about being one. We've got all kinds of really fun things coming up. We do events like this externally every month, but we also have all kinds of great events internally that we do for members only, whether it's career coaching or learning about new technology. We just launched a Microsoft support group, I will say. I'll call it that. I think I'm allowed to call it that. So thanks everyone for joining. Lenise and Deborah, you are gems. I appreciate your expertise. I value the wisdom. I hope everyone has a wonderful first week of spring, and we will see you all back here again very soon.
Bye.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.